"Get off my land before I have you arrested for trespassing," she shrieked, her face a terrifying shade of magenta that clashed violently with her overpriced floral dress. The irony was so thick I could practically taste it, considering she was currently standing on my porch, under my roof, on the 12 acres of pristine lakeside property I had purchased with my own hard-earned money 3 months ago. This was Brenda, the self-appointed queen of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association, and she had just made the biggest mistake of her miserable, meddling life. The air smelled of damp pine needles and the faint, expensive scent of lilies wafting from the massive white tent currently being erected on my lower meadow. I took a slow, deep breath, feeling the cool mountain air fill my lungs as I stared at the chaos unfolding below. There were caterers hauling crates of champagne, a string quartet tuning their instruments with a jarring screech of rosin on strings, and at least 10 laborers hammering stakes into my protected wetlands. My heart hammered against my ribs, a mix of pure adrenaline and white-hot fury. Why on earth did she think she could get away with this? I leaned against the porch railing, crossing my arms and letting out a long, jagged sigh that caught in my throat. "Brenda, is it?" My voice deceptively calm despite the storm brewing in my chest. "You are currently standing on Lot 42, which, if you recall the closing documents you tried to block, is private property not subject to HOA common area bylaws." She let out a sharp, barking laugh that sounded like a seagull choking on a pretzel. "Honey, don't be precious," she sneered, waving a manicured hand toward the meadow where a floral archway was being draped in white silk. "This is the only spot with a direct view of the sunset over the valley, and my daughter deserves a perfect wedding." The HOA board voted, unanimously, I might add, to designate this an overflow community event space for the weekend. The audacity was breathtaking. I felt the heat crawl up my neck. "You voted to give away my backyard, Beth?" My voice dropping an octave. Brenda stepped closer, her perfume, something sickly sweet and suffocating, filling my personal space. "It's for the good of the neighborhood. And frankly, after that eyesore of a fence you tried to build, you owe us a favor. But go inside. Stay out of the photos. And if I see you wandering around in those muddy boots while the senator is here, I'll fine you into bankruptcy." She turned on her heel, her stilettos clicking sharply against my wooden deck like a countdown clock. I stood there for a moment, the silence of the forest feeling heavy and ominous. The sun was beginning its slow descent, casting long, skeletal shadows across the grass. I looked down at the guest list sitting on a nearby table, 220 people. A mini-city was being built on my land without a single permit, insurance waiver, or my damn permission. I felt a tremor in my hands. Was I really going to let her win? Was I going to let this woman treat my home like her personal country club? Not a chance. I pulled out my phone, my thumb hovering over the screen. I thought about the months of harassment I'd endured since moving in, the fines for the wrong shade of mailbox, the nasty notes about my lawn length, the way she whispered to neighbors when I walked by. My chest felt tight, a physical weight of months of suppressed frustration. I took one more look at the white tent, the symbol of her supreme arrogance, and dialed the non-emergency line for the sheriff's department. Then, thinking better of it, I dialed the fire marshal and the Department of Environmental Protection. The first patrol car arrived just as the first guests began to trickle in. The sound of gravel crunching under tires was like music to my ears. I watched from my darkened living room window as Brenda scurried toward the driveway, her smile plastered on like a mask, probably assuming the officers were there to provide a VIP escort for the senator. I could see the flash of blue and red lights reflecting off the gold trim of her glasses. Her body language shifted instantly. The confident strut became a frantic, jerky flutter of hands. I stepped out onto the porch, the cool evening breeze stinging my cheeks. The sheriff, a no-nonsense man named Miller whom I'd met during my move-in, was already shaking his head as Brenda gestured wildly toward me. I walked down the steps, feeling the crunch of dry leaves under my boots. "Is there a problem, officer?" Beth. My voice loud enough to carry to the arriving bridesmaids who were clutching their silk robes in confusion. "Mr. Henderson," Miller said, tipping his hat. "We got a report of a massive unpermitted gathering on private property and potential violations of the protected marshland." Brenda's voice rose to a shrill, glass-shattering pitch. "This is a misunderstanding. This man is a member of the HOA. And we have an easement." I stepped forward, holding up a thick folder of documents. "Actually, Brenda, the easement you're referring to is for the utility company on the north side." Is it? Handing the papers to Miller. "This meadow is a designated no-build conservation zone. And since you didn't ask for my permission, you definitely didn't get the required permit for a structure over 200 square feet or a gathering of this size." The fire marshal's truck pulled up then, sirens giving a short, sharp chirp that made several guests jump. He hopped out, clipboard in hand, looking at the massive tent with its industrial space heaters and tangled extension cords running toward my outdoor outlet, which they had tapped into without asking. "This is a death trap," the marshal muttered, looking at the heaters placed inches away from dry pine branches. The next hour was a symphony of beautiful, chaotic justice. The music stopped mid-crescendo as the sheriff ordered the band to pack up. The caterers were told to cease all food service immediately due to the lack of a temporary commercial kitchen permit. But the real kicker? The DEP agent found 2 laborers dumping gray water from the dishwashing station directly into the creek that fed the local reservoir. Brenda was vibrating with rage, her face now a ghostly pale. "You are ruining my daughter's life," she screamed at me, her finger inches from my nose. "She worked for 2 years to plan this. How can you be so cruel over a little bit of grass?" I looked her dead in the eye, feeling a strange, calm clarity. "It's not about the grass, Brenda. It's about the fact that you think the world is your stage and everyone else is just an extra. You broke the law, and you stole my electricity. You didn't plan a wedding, you planned a heist." The senator arrived in a sleek black town car, only to be met by a line of police cruisers and a closed sign on the meadow entrance. He took one look at the chaos, spoke 2 words to his driver, and the car performed a swift U-turn, disappearing back down the mountain. The look on Brenda's face when she realized her important guest had fled was worth every penny of my mortgage. As the sun finally dipped below the horizon, the meadow was a graveyard of half-collapsed white silk and abandoned floral arrangements. The 220 guests were trudging back to their cars in the dark, their expensive heels sinking into the mud. Brenda sat on a folding chair, surrounded by the wreckage of her ego, as the sheriff handed her a stack of citations that would likely cost more than the wedding itself. Trespassing, environmental endangerment, fire code violations, and theft of services. I stood on my porch, watching the last of the taillights fade away. The forest was returning to its natural state, quiet, and free. My heart felt light. The heavy pressure in my chest finally dissipated. I realized then that standing up for yourself isn't just about winning a fight. It's about reclaiming your peace from those who think they can take it. Justice isn't always a gavel in a courtroom. Sometimes It's just the sound of a quiet evening and the knowledge that no one is above the law, no matter how loud they scream. As I turned to go inside, I saw a single white lily trampled into the dirt at the bottom of my steps. I picked it up, tossed it into the trash, and locked my door. The world can be full of people like Brenda who try to colonize your joy, but they only have as much power as you give them. Tonight, I hit my power back. And tomorrow? Tomorrow, I'm building that fence.